One's ready. One's ready. Go!
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. We got, probably the most impactful one that we've ever done. I think this is the first time that we can say that we're gonna put out information that wasn't previously available to the entire culture. I think that's fair. There's some bombshells in this one. We brought on our good friend. So I've known him. He's a CRO, but he's got a long backstory. John Harmon. So Jonathan J.H. Harmon from Destin, Florida, entered the USAF in the late 80s. Separated after serving some time in Panama and Colorado by chance. He was recruited into pararescue from a civilian drop zone, rejoining the USAF in 1998. That's a great story. He's just out there living his bro life and gets picked up. Somebody's like, you should try to be a PJ. So he ended up getting in as a PJ. Right. Okay, I guess I'll just do the hardest thing in the DOD on a whim because some guy at a drop zone told me. As a PJ, he deployed 4 times and supported 3 NASA TAL missions. He commissioned in 2002 as one of the first 10 combat rescue officers. He was actually CRO number 8. As active duty, he deployed another 8 times. He retired a few years ago. All total, he served just over 26 years. He's a plank holder. That means he was one of the first people there in 3 squadrons. You guys know where that term comes from, plank holder?
It came from ships.
It did. When you were the first person to go on a commissioned ship as your going away gift, they would literally cut off a piece of the ship and they give it to you. That's why you're a plank holder. So when you set something up, you're a plank holder. There you go. It's history in the intro. All total, 26 years. So, and he served to write some of Guardian Angel's foundational documents. Since retiring, he's held progressively senior executive positions at local and Fortune 500 companies. He's been married for 19 years, 6 children, and mentors for several national organizations, and is a lay Catholic leader. But you're asking, why do we bring this guy on? Well, there's been a lot of talk.
Is that it? That's it?
That's it? Yeah. That's it.
It's like
kind of disappointing there.
Casey's,
I know. Yeah. So John's crazy backstory includes the fact that he was the lead PR integration team lead. So there's a whole architecture for when we lose somebody or when somebody gets separated. You may have heard of it. It's Operation Red Wings. He was the guy in the talk that actually, as you'll hear him talk in part 1. So this is a 2-parter. If you're watching this, you're either watching part 1 or part 2. Part 1, he goes over Operation Red Wings and how he was the guy that actually kicked off. He was the guy that called the No Kidding PR event. So he's got some inside firsthand info. He was intimately involved in that, and he wants to set the record straight on some stuff that he was seeing and stuff that he's hearing. If you're listening to part 2, man, Peaches had to big time us and left. He just got up. He was like, hey, guys, this is great, crazy, but I got to go.
Cool dude, but I don't have time for this shit.
We
recorded meeting I got to get to, bunch of chiefs.
We recorded for 3 hours total with John. The second part, man, it was just straight PJ history, man. It was him just absolutely laying out everything that happened in the early days of Pararescue, SEER's integration. He talks heavy on SEER. He's a huge SEER advocate for the stuff that they do. But most importantly, you guys are going to hear things about CROs that you had no idea that they even did. There is a whole backside and a whole kind of like behind the curtain thing that CROs do. And John is the subject matter expert on it. He was one of the first to do it. And it was just absolutely mind blowing couple of hours. So we split it up into 2 sections. If you're listening to this, you're listening to part 1, you're going to hear all about Operation Red Wings and a whole bunch of stuff you've never heard before. If you're listening to part 2, man, it's just two bros jaying it up, man. So it's great. Peaches, how did you think this episode went? You were there for part 1.
I think it went well, just in the way, it was new for us because it was a new setting, right? Like we were actually
shout out to Hardy Media. That's the new podcast studio. I think here in Vegas, Hardy Media Studios is going to be the move. Yeah. So shout out to Matt Hardy, and go check out Matt Hardy over at Hardy Productions. You can just Google it and find him. But yeah, Hardy Media, amazing. Yeah. 4K cameras, black magic, just everything is gorgeous.
And a sprinkle in a little bit of like, why did you have your settings like this? And I was like, well, why? I didn't know, because I'm an idiot. I thought I had it set right. That kind of thing. So a little bit of that too.
Yeah. But this one was the team room, man. Like John was just excited to sit down and be back with the bros. There's a lot of banter. There's a lot of getting made fun of. There's a lot of talk about, stuff that happened, man. It just felt good. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Jonathan J.H. Harmon, he's a legend in the career field, CRO number 8, great dude, and some crazy information that you had no idea about Operation Red Wings and pararescue history. So hope you're enjoying part 1, part 2. Make sure to share the show with everybody. We want to try to get it out there, and this is an important one, so share it to everybody. Hope you enjoy it. Hi, Peaches. I get there's no screen here, so now I just look at you and I just get so excited.
You just reach over and pinch him.
He looks so good. Like we're all here. It's obvious. What's up? One's ready. Coming with a fantastic guest that we're going to get into for a second. But first of all, quick shout out Hardy Media for the studio. Look at us grown-ups.
Yeah, man.
We could have been doing this forever. We're shooting in 4K. We got somebody that actually knows what they're doing. We didn't even have our settings right.
No, I know.
We didn't even have our settings right on the thing that we record on.
But I don't think everybody knows that I am kind of the one that does like.
Everybody knows. I air you out all the time.
Yeah.
There's all the time. I'm like, that's Peach's fault. I want to say welcome our friend Jonathan J. Harmon. He is going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Man, before we even get into your extensive backstory, man, like just thanks for coming up. It's a big deal. He drove here with all of his children in order to do, and the number is more than 3. So, it was like
Twice that.
A little stressful.
Yeah. It was a little stressful. It was funny too. I texted you like this all makes sense now. So he's in town. He's living up here in the Northwest. He says, hey, we're grabbing dinner. And I was like, oh yeah, man, where you going? I'm ready to give him recommendations. He's like, nope, sushi tonight, this one tomorrow, this one for lunch. We're doing there was 2 in one day because it was like brunch and then dinner at one. I was like, oh dang.
Well, it makes sense because Vegas has the more sous chefs than any other place in the world now.
It's so good.
Like,
yeah.
It's amazing.
I told him.
For sure.
Yeah.
You guys ever at Linda Michoacan?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
No?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, they got some mean steaks over there.
Oh
yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, man.
We'll talk about the other place you have to go because it's 2 inside baseball. We're supposed to be talking about stuff.
That's
So, Mr. Harmon, the man, the myth, the legend, at least in my mind. I've known you for a long time. We met at the 58th down here. I was a staff sergeant, PJ, got off my first assignment in England, and then there I showed up to the 58th down the road, and I had a wild and crazy crow.
Yeah. Well, we had a loss.
Yeah.
So I had already been at Nellis working in the CTF. So developmental operational tests for Guardian Angel, the rotary wing and fixed wing assets. So we had a fairly large portfolio of test articles that we were working through. And I had just gotten done doing our side scan sonar and handheld sonar testing when we lost Joel Gentz. And so you guys had you were ready up and you're getting ready to go again. And the commander reached over and asked me if I would take the next go. So I ended up transitioning out of the CTF directly to the 58th and then took that operation. We obviously deployed to Afghanistan. And so that was an amazing trip. We got a chance to cut our teeth on some pretty tough missions. We ended up getting a DFC on that one and then handed it off to the next team who did the video series with some kind of a
Inside Combat Rescue, baby. Shout out to all my Inside Combat Rescue bros. Like, thank you for giving us a lifetime of content to talk about. Obviously, because it won an Oscar at NATO. Did you hear that?
Oh, no.
No.
I made it up. Why did you just say no like it did?
I think it had everything, right? It had tears, it had love, and it was, I don't know.
I remember I was training at Tier 1 group out there in south of Memphis or wherever it is, right?
Memphis,
with those guys as they were trying to learn, like Nat Geo had put them with all the cameras, the contour cameras, stuff like that. And they were just kind of doing their train up for the deployment while trying to use the cameras. And it was a mess.
Just rowdy. We worked with Dwayne, obviously, the 321st. So that's been every once in a while, I like to bring it up. Like, I don't know, man. You don't look as good as you did on the show. Jay, take us all the way back, right? So it's obvious, combat rescue officer, but you have a huge, long backstory. You were a PJ first. Like you came in when it was hard and water was still wet. And
gravity was much stronger back then.
It was much stronger. You had to be much heavier.
Yeah, I saw the whole thing about the potato chip and catching the air.
That's it.
It's genetics, bro.
I have to. I fall like a greasy bowling ball. I can't explain it. Take us all the way back. Young Jay Harmon, not this beautiful self in front of us.
Yeah. It's not particularly interesting. I grew up in Florida.
Perfect. Great question for me.
Yeah. And then it just, had an opportunity. I ended up in skydiving, and my skydiving instructor, his name was Bob, and he's turned out to be a really infamous pararescue man, and he ended up kind of also being my hero. So I didn't know much about pararescue growing up at Hurlburt. You think I would have. My dad used to run the range at Hurlburt. We did a lot of competitive shooting when I was growing up, and so. When I started skydiving, and this guy's like, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. You ever think about doing this for a living?" And I was like, "Yeah, right." I thought he was going to give me a job packing parachutes.
Heck yeah,
yeah, and
living the dream on a drop zone.
Yeah,
as a young man,
and a Cessna 172.
Sleeping in a tent.
It'd be amazing.
Oh man,
Can't
it,
wait,
brother.
And I actually had owned a couple businesses in town, and so this was like kind of my lifelong. Like I was just pushing all in. I was putting all my chips across the table because I wanted to do something I was really passionate about. And little did I know that would change my life trajectory. And so I did call him up, and I never forget. I ended up, he gave me a phone number, and then I called it, and he's like, "Hey," the other end of the line was like, 4246 unsecure senior master sergeant Holler, can I help you? And I was like, Bob, who is this? And it was Bob Holler. And so we went out to lunch, and then he's like, "Hey, you ever thought about being in the Air Force?" Like, actually, I kind of was in the Air Force, but I got out. I was kind of like, didn't really like it. And I was working in Space Command. And so I had gotten out and done some other stuff in town. And so he's like, if you want to be a PJ, you just got to do this little test, and, not a big deal. And I can probably open the doors back for you. And I was like, okay, cool. So I had never run 3 miles in my life. I never swam a mile. It just, you want me to dig a hole?
You grew up on Hurlburt, and you just like, nah.
I
the
not
water
on
stuff
Hurlburt, just in town, and so like, Destin in those days wasn't the big, tourist trap and everything else. And so we used to shoot ducks on the bayou in the wintertime and hunt squirrels and stuff like that, and, surf and fish. And it was just the world's luckiest fisherman. It's a great place to grow up. And, but I kind of like, hey, well, let's see what this is all about. And so I just kind of did the PT test and figured out, well, I guess I can do it, but I suck at swimming. And Bob's daughter was a collegiate swimmer at LSU. And so I just bought some books, learned how to swim, and taught myself. And, kind of did the pass test in August at Hurlburt.
Oh.
It was awful.
Oh,
I got like heat stroke doing it. It was awful.
I'm sure it was outside. Just
And,
the absolute
it was.
worst. Of
Yeah,
course,
in
yeah.
the pool, and the
Well,
pool was
you have
like,
to do it on the standard
98
track.
degrees out. And I'm like, so I ended up getting like, the old Krebs and everything after the whole
Right.
thing, throwing all up. And so anyways, I passed, and, the Air Force was like, yeah, no, we're not taking you back. So I had to fight them a little bit on it, and I ended up getting through, and they were like, all right, well, can you show up like in 7 days to Lackland? So I was like, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
I packed all my shit in my truck, and I drove to Lackland. And here I show up, and I'm like literally off the docks. I've not worked out. I have not been prepared. And I'm about as big as I am now. I don't weigh much, and I don't look like Adonis like most of the other guys do. And I get this roommate, his last name was Blackstone. And his nickname in the Special Forces was Action Figure. If that gives you any... There's a guy that looks like a PJ, and there's this other guy. And I'm like, you might as well call me Jeff, right? I'm like, get rid of this guy. So we're going along, and I have no idea. I'm just getting smacked in the face, just punch, just drill over and over. And these guys are quitting, and I'm not quitting. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe I've got something to offer. And no, probably not.
Upon further review.
No, probably not.
Right.
So each day goes by, and then a week goes by, and then another week, and you know how it works out. If you're just too stupid to quit, generally you'll end up graduating.
Right.
So that's kind of my story. I'll never forget the day that Blackstone quit. He took out like half of our team with him. They just kind of idolized him. And, he just got frustrated with cold. And, there's a certain amount of grit that it takes in order to endure, what is ludicrous. Right. And so there's no one that can really apply ludicrous like AETC.
Yeah.
In those days. So we did a lot of stupid things at stupid times with stupid equipment. And, if you're maybe coming from another career field and you're assessing into the Air Force, it might be quite frustrating. So, we have we have some people that assess over from the SEALs or from SF or, from the Rangers. And, they may have played those reindeer games before, and they're like, yeah, I don't want to play reindeer games. I want to do something different. And they just have to remember that AETC is just kind of microcosm. That's not the real world, and it can get much worse on the real world.
But AETC what is going to be a different command name now, but is it's a massive monster.
It really is.
And people don't realize how big it is with the even just course writing. I mean, they have like 30 employees that just write courses all day long. You're like, well, there can't be that many courses. No, there are.
They're handling basic training.
Oh,
they're
yeah,
handling, all the other tech schools.
Oh,
they're
yeah.
handling the pilot training, all that.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah. Well, the day Blackstone quit, he looked over at me. We were kind of like, putting our things away. He goes, Harmon, if, you might want to stick this out because, maybe I don't know, maybe you have what it takes. And I don't know what that was, but I tell you what, it pissed me off. I was like, you know what?
Oh,
you're the quitter.
They're like, that's how mad
you
you see
You're the
maybe.
quitter.
You see how mad he
Yeah,
is?
yeah.
He was like,
It's the officer coming out of me. Going, don't do it. Yeah.
But I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Say
I said the mother of all
Fudge.
customers.
Yeah. And all the, yeah.
That is such a dated reference.
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah, it is.
nobody watching this show.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, what are they talking about?
It's
Just
still
Google it,
yeah,
Christmas
Christmas
stories.
stories.
Come on.
Classic.
So, yeah, but I ended up graduating with a bunch of great guys. And we went into the pipeline and, I'm a new breed guy, and so, I had combat controllers in my class and, that was an amazing opportunity because we had, these guys, you would think because we're going different career fields in peacetime, we'd likely never see each other again. But it wasn't very much longer after we graduated that September the 11th happened. And we ended up crossing paths and depending on each other for our lives. And so I thought that was paid huge dividends, especially when it was early and it was just us. We were the only rescue guys in the entire country, and we had the only JTACs in country. And we were their rescue teams when they were walking in, back in the early days, or they're riding muleback or whatever the case may be. And so having that sense of camaraderie and the, understanding the grit that it took to get to where you're at, to earn the beret and then retain the beret, and gain quals and keep your quals and stuff. And then somebody has selected you to be the first there. And, for me, it just was a compelling time for me to really see that there was an architecture to this entire madness and that we were like the actual tip of the spear and also the quiet professionals. And I think that, when we get through this, conversation, that'll likely come back to have, be a topic of conversation.
Being a quiet professional?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that there's a difference in my mind. There's a difference between being a quiet professional and a silent professional.
Yeah.
So being a quiet professional is a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? The problem is that people have, misused that.
They've
and have become
co-opted the
silent.
term,
And
yeah.
they're silent.
Yeah.
And people don't want to talk. And I get it. I don't want to talk about things I've done.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Aaron for sure does because he's Aaron. But
The list is so
I
short
know.
because I've done literally nothing. You know what I mean?
But-
So,
But it's and that's why we're where we are now because everybody knows what a SEAL is because they've done a good job of advertising, writing books, movies, and as much fun as I make fun of my friend SEALs
Yeah.
for doing it, and I believe me,
writing
Because
books,
it's
I give
totally
them a lot
deserved.
of shit. But it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
They are willing to jump on that grenade. Like we get a lot of people that don't want to come on the show.
Yeah.
Be active duty instructors at the schoolhouse, stuff like that, because they're like, I don't want to. One, maybe it's because they want to maintain that quiet professional kind of thing, but they just don't want to catch shit in the team room.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
That's it.
Oh, look at what this idiot said, you know,
Right.
and you're like,
The internet lives forever.
Yeah.
It works against us too.
So Peaches, I certainly have seen it myself. So we just had our 25th class reunion, and that represented in my class, my pararescue class, we were a year's worth of OL graduates that got kind of compressed in the pipeline. And so if I mention these names, they are the virtual who's who in pararescue. Some of them are still serving, so I'm going to obviously redact their names, but. Even when I sent out a rubric for our class to kind of gather facts so I could do a virtual, best of a greatest hits reel, I couldn't even get my own classmates to communicate. But, I could likely tease out a few factors like Osama bin Laden's rate, and, the nearly every significant mission, that likely your, audience have heard of we've had airmen on, but it's an unknown entity. And like you said, that's silence. And the silence has now come back to bite, some of these families and things like that. There's been downgrades. It's been consistent in the way that the Air Force has approached awards and decks. And it's been very frustrating, not just for me as an officer trying to, support my men in their careers. And then also like awarding them, for the Valor Awards that they've earned. But it also works against us in our own ethos. So when it comes to recruiting and retention, we are not necessarily the first choice when we, I think, probably have earned it. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Well, it's another like more of a political game sort of thing. But if you don't have a big name, you don't have the same pressure, and that goes all the way through. We have guys that work in the Pentagon, we have to lobby people, and sometimes you have to talk to politicians and stuff. If you tell them, hey, I'm with the SEAL Foundation, that's a $10 million a year. I don't even know.
No questions asked.
They've got weight. They're like, whoa, okay, cool. Because they know that they can mobilize. Because we don't connect in that way and then present in that way, the same way that the SEALs do. We don't have the same weight behind the name when we want to, sometimes when we need to get things done.
I heard something mentioned last night on Nate's podcast, Valhalla, where they were mentioning about the SEAL. The SEAL brand is strong.
Yeah.
And we don't have that. And it's really by design. But, this concept, when I was a brand new PJ, I got a chance to work with some of our more senior, the older PJs. It's me or the legends and guys from Vietnam and stuff. And they told me, they're like, the worst thing that ever happened to the SEALs was they were discovered, and so they deliberately worked against discovery. And that I think works in peacetime, when we're hitting our numbers. But, in wartime, when we're not hitting our numbers or we're not necessarily getting, that caliber of candidate, that we probably should be getting. I think that, we may need to open the kimono a little bit and expose some of this. And I would encourage, thank you first and foremost for inviting me on, but I would also encourage my peers, my classmates and other guys that have come and served our nation to come on, and express in real terms what these missions really were, or maybe dispel some rumors of what they weren't, and also kind of compare and contrast their experiences so that, the candidates for tomorrow and tomorrow's war will have the truth, the ground truth, and be able to, if they're going to devote their lives to a mission area, have a better sense of what that mission really is.
Yeah. And you were lucky to have those mentors, those people that you looked up to, right?
Yeah.
People don't realize hey, everybody out there, it's us now.
Yeah.
That's us. We have to tell these stories and we have to get these stories out there because now we're the old guys. Imagine if he got to his unit and the old guys were like, nah, man, I'm not going to tell these stories. No, and we've all done it, right? We're as 100%. Guilty. Everybody is guilty of it. I don't want to talk about it, right? But again, you got to get, guys, you got to get out there. We're the old ones now. It's us. Ah, crap.
You think there's actually PJs watching this right now.
They watch. They do. Trust me, I get the text message.
Yeah.
Well, screenshots.
There's hate popping right now.
There is. That's why I left my phone outside. I don't want to have to deal with this, but I want story and I'm going to have to hear about it. So as you move through your career, you hit that young lieutenant status, you're out there, you're hungry. You already knew kind of what the game was from being a PJ, but now we're in a different world, right?
Well, the driver for me to become an officer, I think, is noteworthy. So everybody has a different calculus, right? Mm-hmm. And so some people think of a financial piece. Generally speaking, that's the first encounter. And I would caution that anybody that is considering going the officer route, and they're looking at it through the calculus of finance, you're probably not the candidate we need. Just to start with, you just down select yourself right there because those people like you are a dime a dozen. You need to really start to think about the mission, the men, and the motto, right? That others may specifically speaking to that others may live for the CRO. That extends to not just the people that you're seeking to rescue or recover, and for closure for the families, but it is something that extends that umbrella, that sense of protection. Then it just moves another level up, and so you're looking at protecting your men. You're being highly selective over the missions because everybody is just going to say the toggle for a PJ is yes, no. There is no maybe. It's like,
Right.
we're going, and,
It's an on-off
and so
switch.
then
Right.
it's up to the officer to kind of like, all right, let's do, but yes, but when, right? So yes, but with what or with whom, and give them that opportunity to get, a little bit of tactical distance, before they make an operational decision. And so in addition to that, providing the right amount of resources. And so, for me, the calculus was, I looked around, I saw the enlisted men, I saw how much traction they were getting in their career. And I watched the other officers, which we had none. I mean, we had 50 years of pararescue history with no officers. There were a few that kind of stepped in here and there along the way, but there wasn't anyone that was like wearing the beret on a permanent basis. So when the CRO came about, I was asked to consider being one of the first. And what I knew, I expected is that there was going to be a hell of a logistics bill. So we had no milcon. For those in the audience, that we didn't have buildings. We were living in rented hangars. As soon as we would
Prison gyms.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Exactly.
Vegas's prison gym was outside. It was just under an overhang.
Yeah.
It was just over on area 2.
So
that was an old prison though.
We actually, that's the fun part about the prison. Our cages were in the cells.
Yeah.
Like our cages were big. Everybody was always like, oh man, that new
actually
cages.
You could sleep here.
I was like, well, actually you could put a whole bed and then you could have a guard that would walk down the center because they lock from the outside. Yeah, that was it. How apropos to have
they literally
the 58
still had
at that time, the Cowboys, baby.
Still had the glass up and everything. Where you walk in, identify, present your ID credentials.
Oh, it's so good.
But effectively what was happening is, like PJs would be given a piece of crap corner of a hangar. And then, there's a reason why I saw the jack of all trades, right? There'd be a paint bucket, mops, everything else. And you clean the crap out of the place. We'd spend what little, political capital we could muster to try to gain like sheetrock and studs and things like that to build out a squadron.
Sometimes you tactically acquire some.
Yes.
If it's laying out.
If it's laying out.
I mean,
it's free game.
Well, here at Drift is a gift. That's what I always heard, right?
It is free game.
It is free game. You heard it. Peaches ruled on it. It's free game. You leave your stuff out. It gets stolen. Maybe somebody makes a pirate ship in Djibouti.
Yes.
Which may or may not be a true story, but all right.
But, and then inevitably we'd polish the turd up, and then it'd be like somebody walk by and go, okay, that's just about done. Move them again.
Right.
And so it'd be a moving target for us. We'd constantly be, because idle hands are the devil's workshop for PJs. So if you're not over there, cleaning and swiping and stuff, like you're literally going to be crashing shit on the golf course and tearing up officers' housing and shit like that. So there's that part of the heritage that we, we'll maybe push away. But so, I ended up coming out to Tucson and as like CRO, I think number 8 on active duty. So brand new graduate and having to like stand up a squadron from nothing. We didn't have a carabiner. We didn't inherit anything, which at Moody we did. And so we had a pararescue element that was part of the 41st Rescue Squadron. So when the divorce happened, I affectionately called it that, we had nothing. We had some things, but I'll tell you, we didn't even own an ISU. Our annual budget for the largest pararescue team on the planet was $88,000.
Nice.
When I left the 58 in 2013, we had spent $8 million by July. To give you a sense of scaling.
Yeah.
That was the officer. So we're not talking about a tremendous period of time. We're talking less than a career. That was what the officers brought to the table. And on top of that, we got a seat at the table as a community to be able to move the needle for the whole DOD. When it came to personnel recovery, I mean, maybe you guys don't know, but when the CRO was created, it was given three pillars to the charter, right? Gain and maintain the corporate knowledge of personnel recovery for the Air Force, lead and advocate the SEER and pararescue communities, and be a direct combatant, which was very different than the STO. And so we had a very different mindset, the way we approached training, the way we approached financing, the way we approached, the way that we outfitted and kitted and everything else. And so that drove a lot of TTP, tactical techniques, procedures, and that drove the creation of the weapons volumes, which is what I got in on early. And we shared, AFSOC and ACC, Air Combat Command, shared a common volume. But it was clear toward the beginning of my career and pretty much all the way through that there was a whole portion on the AFSOC side that never read it. And or they read the Stanival volumes. And so that we can talk about that later on. But yeah, so I ended up becoming a crow and doing that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about ASOC. Like ASOC is behind when it comes to like the Guardian Angels were always ahead of the game when it came to like jump operations, right?
Yeah.
Always ahead. ASOC was always very behind, very risk adverse and stuff like that. So
how long did it take Double Bag to get to AFSOC comparatively?
I think we got it in 16, I believe.
16.
Right?
That's great. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You guys were jumping SOBs even.
Oh, yeah.
In
so much earlier.
08,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Like,
and the guard guys are always they were jumping the 8-ring high mounted rucks way before. But you'd see one of the Cali guys jumping out like, what a good idea.
I'm like,
why are we not doing this? Why is it?
It's not proven. It's not
in
the reg yet or anything.
This was like the first thing.
Avert your gaze.
Yeah.
Right. These are professionals over here getting the job done.
It's like throwing a grenade. And they just came up with another $8 million parachute or something, or a new parachute system that just came out of this last big meeting. And I'm just like, are we talking about parachutes still? We've been talking about this forever.
The good thing though is that in terms of all the things that you guys worked on as crows and how far it took the GA and the PJ and the crow community, right, is the next step right now is what 2 of the crows are doing at the weapons school right now, and they are building it's not a GA weapon school, right? It's not a GA WIC. It is an aspect war WIC. So you already have controllers and TAC-Ps there.
Yeah.
There are 2 crows there now that are writing syllabus for it, and it's going to be predominantly crows. There will eventually be PJs going through, but the first initial cadre and the first couple tranches of students are going to be crows.
I was an advocate for the WIC. I actually taught all the flew all the sorties and taught some of the curriculum there when I was a junior officer. This was before you guys had your school. When I first became a crow, within the first year, I think crow number 1 is Vinny Sabino. And
had him on the podcast. No big deal.
Yeah. I had told Vinny there's a couple things here, but first and foremost, we need a WIC.
Yep.
And he just kind of like there's some bills you have to pay with owning that patch.
Yes,
and we weren't mature enough at the time. So we programmed it out, to be like a 10-year milestone. And at the time, nobody could have predicted 9/11, and so that, and that we ended up when it really comes down to it, you have so many officers that go, that turnover rate, we're at a 1-to-1 dwell. Where are you going to get them from to stand up a curriculum and sustain it? And then who's going to attend? And so that
email chain is like 7 people long. You know what I mean? At this time, it's 8-10 people long.
All right, so who's going to bite the bullet?
Senior leader working group is just dinner at the house. You know what I mean? Like you had the entire everybody that was running.
Yeah, and so in those days, we gave our biggest talent to the T4.
Yeah.
And I would AR. And so there's not that there weren't other talented men who personally my heroes. But when it comes down to it, it's all hands on deck. Literally everybody's got a bucket and we're trying to put out the fire, and, it hit all of us. I think we were undermanned. There was the scope of the role ended up going from Afghanistan to Iraq to AFRICOM. It's just everywhere. Mm-hmm. And everybody wanted more cowbell.
There's only so much of it to give at that point.
Yeah. And so you got guys doing 1-to-1s, or they're literally rolling from a rotation to another rotation, just moving countries. That was what, I don't know how many rotations you have, Aaron, but I have 15. That's likely unheard of, for an officer. Mm-hmm. But it's not unreasonable to think, I would say that I probably would be embarrassed by some of my peers. We got 15, that's nothing. I've got 80, it's just some ridiculous number. That's yeah.
We had a great guy. He was a Army Tier 1 Sergeant Major. He ended up being an honorary PJ for his work at the school. He's awesome. Tactical genius. He's great. Runs his own company now.
I'm actually curious when I'm going to end up being an honorary PJ. As much help as I've been to the PJ community.
Oh, wow. Put it out. Let's go. PJ Foundation Association. You heard it here first. He's self-nominated. That's a big move. I'll tell you, when you self-nominate for an award, I got to be honest.
I'm just saying.
I'm wondering when you're going to get your honorary beret.
I hope so. It'll be, are they going to take that one away too? It would be hilarious. Be like, yo,
You're gonna give me yours.
why did you give me this? Oh, because we wanted to take 2 away. We figured that would hurt more. Yoink! In your face. Ridiculous.
Yeah, but so for like a whole career and stuff, rolling it up, it's kind of amazing, that I've, you stand at the end of my career, you transition out. Now, I think, are you less than 30 days out?
Oh
right?
yeah, I'm 22 days.
22 days.
He's done.
You're at a year, right? Right about?
Yeah, a little bit more, like a year and a half.
So I'm right at about 7 years now.
Nice.
And it's taken, I'll tell you, it was significant. And I don't know if it's ever really over. There's especially when you dedicate so much of your life to the mission, right? And so that becomes part of your persona. And then the team room talk and the way that we communicate and then what are just the accepted norms of behavior, of performance and everything else. And you go into the civilian world and that's all stripped away. You have to reorient, that OODA loop, it just opens wide up and you're like, I'm lost.
Yeah.
I don't know how to, effectively communicate. I tend to over index on the communication scale, tact, timing and dosage. And I'm just off the rails on all three, and people are like,
it's too much too soon. And I don't want to talk about it.
And it's like, why are you so intense? Like, I feel like I need to go talk to somebody right now. I'm pulling out my little card here. And so
my stress card.
Yeah. So corporate America is not necessarily ready. So trying to find that right, what are the right credentials to have, right? What's the right educational level to have? How do you communicate effectively so that you're not just being super aggro on everybody? And so where does that start? And I'd say that, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Is really going back to the team room, and that's humility, right? Just being super humble, and realizing that, what, you're nobody all over again. You may have had all these great things and done all this amazing stuff, and maybe you're considered to be a hero in most circles. But when it comes to, kind of like that pivot, you're literally starting out as an A1C all over again. Like, you should probably shut up and learn how to follow.
Take the trash out.
Exactly. And be thankful.
Yeah.
Right. And that's been, for idiots like me, it's taken a little while, and I think, in looking across my peer group, some of the guys have landed well, for the first time. And I don't mean to be, cast a stone on previous generations and stuff. Was not a lot of resources for transition back then. So we can't really look to their results as being good metrics. But I'd say that, TAPS has gone through some renovation. And I also would say that we've spawned a different kind of person, that have graduated the combat control career fields, pararescue career fields and such. And so they're having, maybe a higher educational level, more credentialing and things like that. They're being a little bit better prepared to hit the workforce.
We're just grifters. We figured it out. We cracked the code on it. Like, hey, this is what you got to do. And then entrepreneurship, just follow. Like, every PJ has a side gig. Like, everybody's like, oh, I have 7 Airbnbs. And, oh, that's interesting. I do, fractional investing. Every single one of them just grifting all the time. I'm proud of that's my favorite part about it. We're just out there. We're just grinding. Always be closing, baby.
I would say there's a difference between grift and grind. But, grift is a whole other thing. And I don't know, PJ's grifting too much.
Don't you resist this. Listen, if the boys want to grift,
for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Because last time I checked, I threw a Pararescue flash out on the table and he didn't get me a cup of coffee, much less any respect. It's like what is that? What are you trying to do right now? I feel like you're aggressing me.
It is the one thing I have noticed is that whenever you would walk in place in a uniform or they'd see a beret, it was automatically a certain amount of like, oh, okay, cool, credibility walking in. And it's kind of to your point about, whenever we do work with Green Berets, SEALs, Rangers, that kind of stuff.
That audience is different.
That floor of mutual respect, and also like, I know you're not going to quit on me when it gets difficult and that kind of stuff. And it's because I know that you've already been tested.
Yeah.
So, and it's just, you don't even need to talk about it. It's not something that we even acknowledge or even I'm not articulating it right, but there's a certain level of expectation. I know you've been tested. I know you're not going to quit on me. Let's go get after it, whatever it's going to be.
And it's
and
also
make fun of each other
noteworthy
later for it.
that those other communities are so large compared to ours.
Mhm.
And so if you think every SF guy, every SEAL has worked with a PJ or controller, it's likely not. If you're a white soft guy, you may have never met one of us. Or maybe you've just heard of us and it's likely to have been bad, and I mean that, in the most humorous way, because we develop these strange reputations, like PJs
Hacky sacks,
slacklining.
Yeah, exactly.
Slacklining hippies.
Yeah.
And then, we like strippers, we wear flannel, lots
Divorces,
of tattoos,
yeah.
a couple divorces,
Gotta have
Harley
it.
Davidson.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like you got my bio. Did you?
Where's your bag of granola?
You guys don't know this because we haven't said it yet, but our first live viewer ever of all time, we know this episode is going to do 1 view. That one made her laugh. So it's John's beautiful wife. But yeah, that was I just love the stereotypes. They're so good. We're sky nurses. You're dumb jocks, but not really good at stuff because we're actually better athletes too.
You're better runners, not better.
We are better at ball sports.
You're not better.
Stop it. Shane Griffey and I used to tear you up.
You guys never tore me up.
You hit better.
You guys could never keep up with me. I was always receiving. I could never throw.
I've never punched a child before, but I will hit you. I swear to Debbie Love, I will open hand slap a child. So, all right. On to serious stuff, man. So we talked about your career and we talked about, you kind of alluded to some missions that you're involved in. And, you hit me up and you were like, hey man, I want to come on and I want to talk about Red Wings. I don't even know how we start, but it feels right. Like, give me like a 6-month lead up where you were, what you were doing, and how it is that you found yourself to be on probably the most famous special operation of all time.
Wow. So there's a whole lot that goes into this. The windup is, the difference between being a CRO and being a PJ is that it's the scale, right? So PJs they make tactical differences. As a CRO, you can make strategic impacts. For those that don't know, when we think about operational level of warfare, we think about like the Combined Air Operations Centers, CHOCs, TOCs, things like that, where literally it's the focus of all that command and control comes into one node. And there's somebody that is sitting there kind of like being that human, to digital interface where you have like, say, 50 missions going on at once, but they're literally cherry picking, all right, which one is going off the rails? And let's make sure we're flexing assets there. There are still human beings that make it, that make an art of that. And I ended up being in that seat. The reason why is because when 1003 Victor transitioned to Iraqi freedom, I was in the Combined Air Operations Center that night as like one of the few CROs in the world at the personnel recovery desk. The guy that was at the fires desk is somebody we all know, and he's gone on. He's retired now after making 2-star, and he's working for Palmer Luckey right now. And so, that's the caliber of. I'm probably unworthy to tie his shoes, but my point being is that it gave me an opportunity as a young CRO, formerly a PJ, to really see how massive the air war was and the ground war, and how that fusion works, how we flex rescue assets in the planning phase, and then how we push it out. So I got a chance to probably work on or coordinate on over 1,000 missions in both in Afghanistan and Iraq simultaneously. One of those was the rescue and recovery of Jessica Lynch and the rest of the 507th and all of the those that were held in captivity under the Saddam regime. So they went through an extensive reintegration program back at Landstuhl, Germany. The Joint Personnel Recovery Center flexed in some guys to support that. And I did not go on that mission, but the SEER specialists that I worked with did. And so when they brought back all of their lessons learned, I helped them document everything. And then because they weren't necessarily steeped in the rescue culture, I think I provided a good glance view on what was lessons observed versus lessons learned, and maybe also provide some additional like stratification on, let's not forget some things. From a SEER specialist perspective, you want to always make sure, hey, command and signal, how did you exercise your evasion plan of action, all that kind of stuff. But there's some other stuff, from the rescue team's side that they want to know, did this work? Did that work? Did you do this? How easy was it to do this? So we can then build a side picture of what we can expect in another air war. So I ended up going after 1003 Victor, doing all that, I came home. Then I went to Afghanistan and flexed in as the commander for the 48th. Before the 48th was the 48th, before we were initial operating capacity, IOC, I brought a team in and we owned all of rescue for the entire country. And we were in direct support for the SEALs and the SF. They're based out of Kandahar. So we flew to every end of the country, and we did all kinds of great missions. That's where I got all this, I tease, I got 5 jumps into Tarnak Farms, combat jumps. That's why they're air quotes. Those are not combat jumps. It's like there were people on the ground.
Still wearing that mustard stain.
No, I've never. None of my team. I have pictures.
Okay.
And actually, I had on my jump record, I had one of our admin folks be like, "What is this? There's no combat jumps in Afghanistan." I was like, "Hey, whatever you want to say." It's just
it was 2 good days, baby.
Yeah.
Weather was nice. Ripped off 2. Like there's.
We jumped some SF guys. Yeah. We jumped some SF guys.
No,
they had
18,000 just vibing.
They had
you
riggers,
and your bros,
and they had no parachutes, and we had no 50 cal.
Oh, tight.
So and 40 mic, and things were a little bit dicey back then. So I was like, hey, I hate to admit that I deployed in the country without all the ammo I needed. It was supposed to be here, and the freaking guys before me shot it all up. So,
but seriously, it is a problem though that
Yeah.
we're gonna have. Like, you can make fun of me, but like I do need that ammo.
Yeah.
So,
and they were like, hey, guess what? We happen to have exactly what you need, but we don't have airlift or parachutes, and we want to do this. And I was like, okay, let's jump into Tarnak Farms, which is the place where Osama bin Laden planned 9/11. And at the time it was like it's a range. So it was all like UXOs out there on one side. And we had DZ set up, surveyed on the other side. And I'll be damned, I jumped these SF guys in, and we had a quad out there. That was our ground party, right? With a M4 slung. And it's like, and so these guys, we land, on the X. The SF guys land over. I'm like, where are they fucking going? Like, I don't even.
We're on that one, free fall boys. You know what I mean? I know a couple free fall team guys.
They all shoot in, and of course they pop up and they're like, "Whoa, we're the greatest." It's a pretty amazing time, and they're all jazzed up, which is to be expected. And then all of a sudden, these trucks, that they had brought, I guess were on the sideline. I didn't really pay much attention to them because I was up in the aircraft, so they drive their trucks out there. Well, they landed in the impact zone. There were UXOs. Literally, if you looked everywhere, there's rocket motors and freaking mortar rounds and all kinds of shit laying on the surface. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Hey, guys, look, it looks just like a mortar. Put
So
that
I'm like,
down.
Holy shit.
Put that down, 18 Bravo.
What
did I just tell you? Don't touch anything. Didn't I just say that?
So I got on a quad, and I'm like, damn it, I don't want to do this. And I'm just like, hit the motor, and I'm like, no. And I'm like, like their vehicles, they have circled up in the middle of the impact area.
They're gonna be fine.
And they're all like, high-fiving each other and everything. I'm like, So I just get on one track because obviously a deuce and a half, whatever. So I'm on one track, and I'm just trying to I'm literally like getting out there to where they're like high-fiving each other, and I pull off and turn the motor off, and I'm not getting off the quad. And I'm like, hey guys, awesome. Just want to call your attention to the fact that you've landed in the middle of the impact zone about 2 miles off the X. And if you take a look at your feet, you may notice that there are rocket motors and UXOs as far as you can see. And they were like,
and direct your attention. Yeah.
And I was like, so I recommend that you go directly to the vehicles and take in a single file line, exit the impact range. And you will follow me. And that's a very different kind of officer, I think, than what you would expect. But the fact of the matter is that it was my authorization that brought him out there in the first place. So I'm responsible for the results.
Yeah. We used to have the old controller delay in England. You guys would be like, oh, you want to do a 6-5 way off the ramp? And we'd be like, oh, yeah, guys, you guys just go ahead. We'll be out right after you.
Yeah.
And then it was literally like,
we'll be
they would go, and it was like the,
There they go.
there we go. Yeah,
Well,
exactly. You guys were like, oh, I'm coming.
That was never me because I was always a jump master.
You were always a jump
So I purposely send people
Yeah,
out, and then I'm like, all right, cool, now I'll gain her out.
Let these boys figure
Yeah.
it out. I don't want to be part of it,
No.
but let them figure it out, and then I will see them on the ground. I had a problem my entire career. I could never keep my boots right. all that orange from center point just getting.
Snap.
Yeah. What is this? Is this what you used? The smoke that you used the middle of the drop zone that marked it? Did I accidentally hit it with my foot? Oh no. Was I jumping equipment? Oh,
I feel like we were on a lot of the same jumps at just different areas of the globe at the same time. This is like guys giving me shit.
Yeah.
Like I did a jump in Okinawa and one of our AFSOC buddies ended up in the trees on the golf course. And
I hate to see
so
that.
I'm on the X, right? As Howland wins, we're probably at maybe a little over the limit. But
No,
anyways,
that's a van reading,
so
baby.
Right. You just slow it down when you
Just
right.
no, you're good. Get that Kestrel. Where's the weather boy when we need him?
So somebody was trying to give me shit in the truck ride back, like, hey, sir, why didn't you hit the drop zone? And I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? I was on the X. I didn't see you fucking there. Like,
it was only I was having dinner for one of you.
The guys didn't know I was prior enlisted, and I totally all of my what little performance I could demonstrate to being an enlisted guy. And I think that's worth noting is that if you really want to have some credibility as an officer, you want to build capability, you really should, I think, start in the enlisted corps.
Yeah.
Because that's where, you get this type of, the team room talk.
Mm-hmm.
You might have made it out of the aircraft okay. You might have landed without breaking yourself, but goddamn, were you a piece of shit. It's like...
You piece of sky trash.
Yeah, like you freaking kicked me in the face while you were blacked out, spinning around in a circle. Thank God you had a professional there to deploy your chute for you.
Yeah, you know what? Hey, I got you. Get out of here.
I got you, bro.
I'll be Sky Shark you at 8 so I can finally have a nice free fall. Get out of here, Jared.
I know. I'm looking at you not because I'm incriminating you. So guilty consciences, to raise your hands. But I'm just saying that I really learned a tremendous amount of being enlisted, and I would not have traded it for the world.
Dogs for life.
And I've heard both of you discuss this dilemma where there are people that are constantly questioning themselves about how should they assess and how do they do. And in my estimation, and I don't know if this is still the case, but there was an established pattern, and I think it might have been SF. It could have been the SEALs, but I do think that it is noteworthy that if you come in and then become a Mustang, maybe you don't always get that, the dirt off your feet, so to speak, of being enlisted. But I tell you what, when it comes to knowing when to stand your ground, like what hill you want to die on as an officer, that experience I had as an enlisted guy put me in the right place at the right time with the right people. It was not the time to be, my career dissipation light was like going off in the corner of my eye. And that's when I was like, fuck, I'm a habitual line stepper. I'm doing it.
Well, that is going to be the title of this episode.
Yeah.
Habitual line stepper.
Yeah. I'm going to step right across the line. And I'm doing the right thing.
Habitual line stepper.
Well, when you start talking about being in the right place in the right time, how are you in the right place, the right time during Operation Red Wings?
Okay, so great. Bring us back to center.
That was really nice.
So I ended up back.
Wow, that was smooth.
I was back at the KOC in 2005. Sitting in the seat, and I had inherited this duty title, like reintegration team chief for CENTCOM or something like that. And it was kind of like a new term. We kind of built it because there was a gap. And so the combat rescue officer that was there before me and several others put it together, and they were put together kind of a playbook. And as we were high-fiving each other, he's like, hey, by the way, there's a playbook laying on your desk. Don't forget. And I was like, okay, cool. And he had known that I had already kind of had my foot in this door. And so, I ended up, taking this on. And I also had a lot of experience at the con, kind of negotiating what was fact from fiction. There's a lot of, during, when you're on Merc, you've been in the fires channels. And so that there's a lot of stuff that comes in there.
Those
and
screens start blinking red, dude. Especially when you see like 7 or 8 of them at the same time. You're like, oh no.
Everybody's trying to jump in. And
no.
I think at one time when early on, there was like, I want to say it was over 10,000 people in the PR chat channel.
There's no reason for that.
And so I
imagine how bad it would be over Merc.
That's what I'm saying.
It's bad enough on group chats. If I'm with 10 people on a group chat, forget about it. It is a dumpster fire. Imagine 10,000 people that think they have something important to tell you on Merc.
So there's something, like this was a much smaller in scale. A lot of people had, by that time we'd learned a lot of lessons, had trimmed and pared and everything down. But I also had an affinity. I think I mentioned earlier, I used to work in space. And so I was familiar with the constellation and everything, and I kind of knew some of the capabilities. And then I knew what their mission set was over there. And we had a space patch wearer on the floor. And so for Red Wings, at that time, we weren't, we were conventional rescue. I was a half sock guy at that time. So for those of you that don't know,
Great term.
half sock, right? Like the guys literally cut patches in half, and you have like an air combat command patch and an half sock patch sewn together, and you wear a uniform. We are AdCon or TACON to AFSOC, but we're AdCon to ACC. So where does the money come from? Air Combat Command, right? So that's what you're doing.
That's in all the military doctrine. You want to separate your command chains. You want to
make it more confusing.
You want to have unity of command is really not important. Yeah. We want to just separate as many people as we possibly can. This is never gonna fail. It's gonna be great.
So we ended up so I had some visibility, and I was aware of some things. And I can't really convey why it was, but for some reason or another, I became aware that this was an event. And I would say that, like, if you slew a whole bunch of different things together, and you think of like one signal, is a metric, right? That's a data point. You have another signal. Okay, there's two. It takes like three to really develop a trend line, right? And so these instances occurred for me. I aligned it all as to being an event. I brought what I knew to the space patch. I said, "Hey, can you validate what I'm looking at?" He's like, "Absolutely. That is all genuine. Those are real findings, real sensor, activities." And so then I brought it all together, and I brought it to the AFSOC guy sitting on the floor, the SOL, Special Operations Liaison Element, and they looked at me like I had a horn grown out of my head, because they were busy, working on their officer development kind of stuff, and they didn't have time for me. And I thought that was rather odd because I was wearing a flight suit, and
hey guys, I don't know if I resemble
I
anybody that you work with,
and I've got a beret sticking out of my pocket, and I'm like, I'm coming over from the JPRC. Flex. I'm flexing down, right? You're not catching
Do I have
my
to put this beret on? I will. I don't know if you guys.
Hey guys, I know
pretty solid right here.
I know we work at night. Don't let the glint blind you, bro.
They're all like, "Get out of here, Bob."
It's yellow. It reflects.
I was like,
more
"Hey,
light.
I'm from the JPRC, and I think you've got an event going on. Do you need my help?" And they were like, "No, we've got it." And so that kind of this is another thing. You get told no as a PJ. You're like, you know what? F you. I'm about to
do it anyway.
I'm going to do this anyways. I know what's going on, and I'm not going to stop until I get all the data I need to convince you need to get off your ass and do something. And so that's what I did. I went back to the ISR folks. I went to the battle cab and everything else. So all the sensors in that area were getting comm cuts. And intuitively, after working with the SEER community and seeing what was going on in Iraq early on, I knew that what I had was an event, and I knew I had probably the way the comm was coming in, it looked like we probably had people that were on the run. Okay. I didn't have enough information at the time. And so, what you think of is like an emanation in the battle space, like say you turn on a strobe, right? That light, it
promulgates.
Yeah. Got him. Oh, wow. Nice.
Got there first.
But anyways, so that there are many different types of signals that come out of that. One could be the detonation of an RPG. The other one could be, clicking up and trying to hit transmit on a radio. The other one could be I turned on a cell phone, and a myriad of other things. Each one of those creates a different little footprint. And once you understand the declination of the sensors that are picking it up, you can then, with a high degree of probability, put down a footprint on the ground or at a three-dimensional structure like a mountainside. So I was able then to try to put everything together, and I came up with something that looked like an evasion plan of action. Somebody's running a military crest, and they're trying to communicate, and it looked like one radio. Initially, there was a whole bunch of comm chatter, and there was a lot of signaling going on, and then almost radio silence with another one. So I brought that to my director at the time, and he's familiar with the task force. I was not read in, so I had absolutely no idea, of the rest of the other teams. And so that was my first introduction. He brought me up and said, hey, it was kind of almost a joke, like, hey, Lieutenant, come with me. I want you to meet some people. So he marches me in and goes, hey, we go upstairs.
Feel like you're getting set up.
And yeah, it was totally,
but like somebody grabs you, like, hey, man, come here and talk to this guy. I'm like, first of all,
this guy is such a sage, though. He's such a sage. He knew exactly what was about to happen. This is going to be a big event. And so he like literally leaned into it and pushed me into it to just give me that, like, he just put the junior guy forward, which was his way to do it.
What a move.
Right? Super slick. And he's still on active duty, by the way.
Wow.
Yeah, his name is Steve Buteau. He's the commander of the Defense Innovation Unit now.
Wow.
And so tip of the hat to Bucky. Amazing guy. He's also likely, he's completely networked into the future war, and he works with some other folks that are pretty interesting in the space community, we'll just put it that way. With the Air Force liaison to SETI and a myriad of other things. So he ended up introducing me to the guys at the task force that were inside of the old man's chair, right? So inside of the CFAC. So he has a big kind of war room, and then off the side there's a little closet, and with like knock if you dare to enter, and there's a red
Use
phone.
the secret knock.
Yeah. So he knocks on the door and they're like, "Who is it?" And it's like, "Hey, it's this guy down at the JPRC. We got this guy, this lieutenant. He thinks he has something to show you." And they're like, "This better be good. We're in the middle of some shit."
Dicks.
Yeah, right?
Drop that, Lieutenant, right now.
Yeah, I want you to bear crawl in here.
Yeah, and you better make the noises.
Yeah, all of the noises, right? So I show up and they're like, "What do you want?" And I'm like, I have this thing and here's what I'm seeing and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, "Jesus Christ, hold on a second." And they're like, the flatbed scanner, pick up the red phone. "Hey, do you get this? Take a look at this. Tell me what you think." And they're like, "Who are you again?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm this guy. I'm down on the thing. I was a PJ and now I'm this combat rescue officer thing. Like, never heard of you."
Never heard
phone
of
rings
it.
again. They're like, Yeah, you're standing right here. Okay, bye. You need to get your ass on the next airplane to Afghanistan. Go. And I was like, "Oh shit, did this just get real?" What? And they're like, "Oh, and by the way, there's this other thing. They'll brief you on the way." And so, I got
all
my
the read-ons and all
I got,
that.
yeah. And so that, in conjunction with that whole piece went in, I also was the guy that put together, so we think of like personnel recovery, right? So we have 5 phases of personnel recovery. Report. So whether or not we can authenticate, right? And what is a report, right? Is it somebody that's saying, PRC 90 saying, "Hey, I'm a pilot. I just bailed out. My call sign is this, blah, 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 blah." So there's that whole drill down on that with the 9 line, or 14 line or whatever the case may be. And then there's the support phase, which people tend to overlook. But in the situation with Red Wings is that we had a fairly good indication that somebody's on the run. We had no communication with them, but they were likely needing to be resupplied. And so that resupply, I was in charge of. So I set down the pattern and we did airdrops all over the side of that mountain, on what I understood to be his route of travel. So they would be just in time delivery for resupply, whether it be water, ammunition, communications, and some other things. And if you were a bad guy and you picked this stuff up, chances are you would just use it like you thought it should be used. And, a JDAM would come and visit you in the middle of the night, so that, or maybe not in the middle, maybe just in a few minutes.
Whatever.
So we're running in orbit.
At that time, there was no real limits on a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
What time is it? Is there a village anywhere nearby? How close?
Those guys were there for
throw
a
a
mission.
JDAM at it. It'll fix it. 500-pounder.
Right.
Send it.
So they were there for a mission, surveillance and reconnaissance for a direct action follow-on, right? So they were gathering intelligence, on a bad guy and his family and all of his buddies. And so when their operation went south, that doesn't mean that the bad guy in that mission stopped. That's running in parallel, right? So Red Wing, that whole event ended up becoming Turbine 3-3 as well. So, the guys back at Bagram decided, what, we have a buddy, that our buddies are, in danger. And we're going to press the task force to give us a helicopter. We're going to go in there and visit violence on these people for, wrecking our friends. And that did not turn out well. So the C-47 was shot down on final. and the loss of life of everyone on board. And so now we had a catastrophic personnel recovery event. We went from being like, hey, we can kind of containerize this. We can kind of use some of our covert signaling. We can use some of our covert methodology and all that to, recover or rescue, our survivors at the time. That's what we thought. To, oh shit, this is white lights, open comms. There's no sense in it's literally a smoldering wreck on the side of a mountain. And this is the largest single loss of life in the history of the SEALs. So it's all hands on deck.
Even with extortion?
This is before extortion.
Oh, at the time. Yeah. At the time. I was like, oh man, holy crap. I was like, did I somehow miss an event where
extortion is the biggest now.
Now.
Right. At that time. So, there's a lot going on there. So we send guys up on the side of the mountain. The guys are walking up. Other guys are flying in. We've got conventional guys assisting. We have unconventional guys assisting. We have special operations guys assisting. So this is just, and so when you think of a personnel recovery event, we're literally putting everything into it. I'll tell you, when I got there to Bagram, to the team room, I open up the door and, I'm talking to the guys and stuff. And then a little bit goes by, and then, we have the initial teams come back from the side of the mountain. Scott Duffman pulls me aside and he told me to my face, he goes, sir, if you'd have told me to climb that mountain one more time, I would have quit. And I tell you what,
from Duffy,
that's, for me, that moved the needle for me because I've never heard a PJ ever say I quit. Not one time, not my whole career. Up until that point, that was the first time I ever saw somebody say there's a limit. And that was
you were about to hit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to
what
give
good
you an idea,
feedback though, and just to have the environment where that's accepted, people, we can't explain it enough. Cause if you haven't ever felt that trust to be able to go to somebody, that's his boss, man.
Yeah.
He went to his boss. That speaks to the environment and really who we are as teams. We joke about being in a team room, but I always knew as an NCO, as a senior NCO, all the way down, if you're just a young dude, but you have a good idea, that good idea is going to win out.
Yep.
And to have an environment where that young guy can go, hey, commander, you're stupid on this one. We got to do it a different way. The fact that Duffy would look at you and be like, hey, man, I am right at that line. You have to help me not be close to that line. That just speaks to our communication as a community.
Since then, I have heard through the grapevine, to the operator grapevine, not necessarily from the Air Force, but from other branches of service, there are others that were involved in that recovery mission that tapped out afterwards. It was basically the culminating event for their entire career. And to give, when we think of what is inevitably, and we'll discuss here later. I also want to give tremendous tribute to those that carried rucksacks up that mountain and carried bodies and put them in body bags and gave those families closure. Secured the weapons that were adrift and all the various, ComSec and everything else. And those that, went over and over and over and over that mountain to bring closure to this event. We'll likely talk about Marcus and, the Red Wings crew, but there's just so much more that we should probably, pause right here and just say hey man, those are angels.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what we say from this point on, that's still an indelible thing.
Yeah.
And so I really to me, when we talk in the team room about things that could be improved or whatever, that does not negate their sacrifice.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it before. You've got all the decorations that are out there are because somebody was put in an extraordinary situation.
Yeah.
So usually that
you don't get decorated for a
right.
good day. Yeah. You don't get decorated for a good day at work.
Right.
I mean, it was a bad day at work.
Things went wrong.
Right.
Stepped up.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. So the whole thing is we sent in a team. There was a separate team, a ground element that went in and secured Marcus. We had another group that was combing the mountain looking for bodies, anything that they could gain. So we ended up extracting the bodies. It took a little while to find the last guy. And then I had already had Marcus in my possession, and we were back at launch duel when they finally found the last guy.
Okay.
So they brought Marcus out. the gentleman, the 18 Delta, that actually secured Marcus is a friend of mine. I was just trying to contact him before I came on the show.
Ooh, you could have called in. That'd be a great one.
Yeah, coincidentally, he worked for me as a civilian after I retired and everything. Didn't even know the guy. Had no idea he was affiliated with Red Wings.
Huh.
So this is like a providential thing, not coincidence.
Right.
And so we got a chance to compare and contrast notes and things. And then he treated Marcus initially and then transferred him to what would be like a 3 a.m. pickup. So the rescue team came out of Kandahar, went up to Bagram. They got briefed in. They were like, oh my gosh, bright lights. Like, what is this? We didn't even know that this existed up here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they were read into some of this stuff. And then they were ended up being the instrument that flew up to the side of the mountain and did like a one-wheel hover in the middle of a freaking storm at 3 a.m. with their helicopter stripped down. And so
that's one thing. The movie
got wrong. Well, the movie, they just didn't have the budget to do it.
Yeah. I was like, man, the best part of that rescue is like the flying of those helicopters. I mean, it was just absolutely insane. Insanity.
We screwed up some things too. I mean, during that pickup, the PJs, which I don't know if I'd be okay to name their names. Both of them are retired now. They're both out of Tucson.
What's up, GS? What's up?
Yeah.
What's up, dude?
And so they did a, kind of like a transfer of care. They like to classify it as a rescue. And I mean, like, when you fly up and you put your life on the line and you know what, let's call that a rescue. Conventionally, we don't think of it that way though, because Marcus was already rescued. He was in friendly control. And so, but that was like, they weren't briefed that Marcus would be in man jammies. They were looking for an American SEAL, like his, coming out there looking like Steven Seagal or some shit, like that wasn't what Marcus looked like. So they drew down
blood on the arms.
Yeah. And so they drew down on him and Marcus like, what the hell? Like, I'm friendly, and so he's like, hey, and so there was a little bit of, confusion, that's the critical phase. And so they worked through it and then, got him on the helicopter. And then I guess a couple other interested guys, and then flew him back to Bagram, and that's where I was. So, it was a good mission. From our perspective, there was a lot of work to be done. I think the guys did, from the combat control and from the Air Force perspective. I can't think of there might have been one thing where a guy tried to maybe pick up a souvenir or something, that ended up creating a kerfluffle, but that wasn't, I don't think that was a souvenir as much as it was just securing something that was on the crash site. And it didn't get added back into the, when you put everything in the bird to fly it back. And so I was like, hey, I got the, how that can sometimes happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the bringing them back to launch stool, I'm doing the full reintegration piece, stripping down all the stuff. I ended up having to hijack so I got accredited for hijacking a C-17. It's not true. Why
does every great PJ story have just a little bit of federal crime?
Well,
and just a sprinkling. All right, and that was the
fake
third
news.
time that I got arrested, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't the first one was actually a detainment. I didn't even go in.
They didn't even read me my rights. That's
the
not
cuffs
an
were
arrest.
on for like 5 minutes, guys. They just needed to talk about a fight.
I don't remember you being there.
I was detained.
I would have felt much better if you
I was detained. First of all, why do you know the difference between detained and arrested? First of all,
you know exactly.
So, all right, get back to hijacking this plane.
Yeah. So, I had Marcus with me and, we're trying to get him on the flight line to get him out of town. And, I was not getting any love from the Air Force, because I didn't know it at the time, but there was a little bit of friction because the Air Force has so many, C-17s and some of them are chopped to this other organization. And this other organization wasn't playing fair with all of their toys.
Shocker.
And they wanted more toys. And the CFAC kind of said, yeah, enough of that. You go ask those guys for some help. And I didn't know any better. I'm like, hey, man, this guy's he's giving me the Heisman. Well, as, a good PJ would, I'm like, I'm going to get some enlisted shit done here. But now I'm an officer, so guess what? Wonder Twin powers activate.
Hey, can't the Loadmaster change the flight plan?
Right?
Randy.
Yes, come on over here. Let's have a chat.
Hit them buttons, big dog. What kind of whiskey you drink?
Yeah, and that's how that went down. So it literally middle of the night, get out of the jingle truck, walk over to the airplane as they're doing their pre-flights and go, hey, I'm in the Air Force. You in the Air Force? You fly this thing? Like, yeah, I'm the pilot.
He did recognize the flight suit.
Yeah.
He was like, hey.
Yeah.
I
It was the white teeth that did it, right? You must be the pilot. So, yeah, and I'm like, hey, man, I need a favor. Like this, I'm in a jam and I'm wondering if you can help me out. And I've got this precious cargo. You can't ask me who it is, what they do, where they're from. But I'm a combat rescue officer and you might have heard what we do. I really need your help to do something to get me to Germany tonight. And he was like, bro, we can do that. So they opened up.
Love getting a yes right away.
Yeah.
Man,
it
start
wasn't
with
even-
yes.
yeah.
That's so nice. It's just better.
Yeah. And so we put him in the crew quarters. And so Marcus slept on the crew deck. And I didn't know it at that time, but as we were loading in, a 60 Minutes film crew was just done in Afghanistan. They were in the belly of the C-17 and they were waiting to see what our truck was. I heard them overheard them speaking about there being a Navy SEAL in this big event, and they were betting each other that this was him.
No.
And I was like, you've got to be shitting.
Imagine everything works out great, and then you have to deal like this is just the silliest little wrinkle too that you're like you could never plan for it. It could never be a thing. Like you had to take what you got, and then there just happens to be a news crew on board. Oh, 60 minutes. Fantastic.
So, I'm thinking, hey, if there's a SEAL in country, a camera will find them, right?
Yep.
So I'm like,
it's a tractor me.
And we can go even further. Like if there's a AFSPEC war team, the camera will find the PJ.
Yep.
So,
They will. That's
There's a reason I put myself
because
in
he
the center.
set up
He's
a
just
slack line.
natural selection or
I got the
something.
best
Selection
background. Like
criteria.
hey man, you ain't cheating, you ain't trapped. Why do you think I showed up early? Jerry gets in, like, oh wow, everything looks great. Yeah, because I deboed it.
So
my bike.
Yes,
we ended up loading in, and they were none the wear. So we put Marcus in on the crew door, so they didn't get a chance to see him. And then we loaded up in the ramp, and so they're eyeballing us. This is classic distraction. And so we're loading up in the ramp, and they're just like, "Is that him? Is that him?" And
that one tickled.
I didn't look like I was beat down or anything. So I was,
crispy
and-
uniforms,
Oh,
plate
yeah.
carriers for no
well,
reason.
it's a lieutenant. What's that going to give you?
Yeah,
It's like,
slick little
that guy
rifle
is not
on
in
you.
charge of anything.
You're wearing your blues.
Yeah.
Hi guys. Yeah.
So we were in civilian clothes, and we ended up in Germany, and I met up with the SEER specialist there who, was amazing. And we had a whole wing of the hospital locked down. I was able to, I had everybody sign NDAs and everything and lop off a bunch of different, what had classically been the plan, for reintegration. Because before we were wheels up in Afghanistan, I had asked Marcus, I said, Marcus, this is the decision point right here. Do you want to continue to operate, or do you want to be a hero? And he said, no, I want to continue to operate. And I was like, okay, so this is going to look a little different. We're going to do it this way. And that's how we ended up doing it. So when I got to Germany, we pared down all of the, onlookers and everything else. We really sanitized everything down. I locked everybody down with NDAs, and we really hit it hard in the debriefings. And got him, back after that was done. We ended up bringing him to Stuttgart. We got a chance to meet with the other SEALs. I don't think they even knew who he was, because they certainly didn't. It didn't even move the needle. Like, hey, there's this guy, and they're like, yeah, whatever. I've seen a million SEALs. We're one of those guys. Yeah. They treated him like he was nobody, and which was surprising to me because the entire world, the call volume at the launch stool operator was over 1,000 phone calls an hour. Right? For the world press trying to figure out, when is this person coming?
Yeah.
His name wasn't even released. And by the time that we left, there had not been a phone call in 24 hours. That's how well we did at sanitizing and making sure that we had this individual on a path to reintegration, back into service and back into the operations, right? So nobody knew his name and nobody knew what had really happened. And so during the course of that, I heard the story of Red Wing for the very first time. I think there was initial SEER communications, and intelligence gathering. But the first time that he told the story all the way through was to me and our team. I had a SEER specialist and a SEER psychologist with me, 3 of us. So we recorded everything, and that's all locked away in a vault in the JPRA, the Joint Personnel Recovery Agency. So there are a lot of details that never made it into the movie, never made it into the books, some of which even Marcus is unaware of. Some of it is still classified because it's still being used. It's effective. And so, we try to steer clear from that. But otherwise, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Just go. I'll just pull your little string.
My question would be, are there any inconsistencies in the stories that are out there? Like, has it been told pretty much like as everybody in the world knows it? Like, are there any other additional heroes or like, hey man, you'll never believe. Yeah, I know that everybody focuses on this, but like there was some incredible action from this person or this entity or anything like that.
So yes, there's a lot of discrepancies or deviations or whatever you'd want to call it. Some you could likely attribute to fog of war. Others is just a narrative that grew life of its own. And if you go back to correct the record, what good does it do?
Right.
And those that can correct the record may not want to correct the record simply because it would surface the fact that they were involved in the first place. So there are different levels of classification and collaboration, that we, especially in those days, we were still engaged, right? And so we're talking 2005. 2003, we went into Iraq. So we haven't even hit the surge in Iraq at that point.
Right.
Extortion hadn't happened. This was a significant loss of life for the SEALs, and as far as Turbine 3-3 is concerned, the task force is also on its heels because they lost to 47 and their crew. This is a big deal. And so everybody's trying to sift through the lessons learned. Meanwhile, we have a guy who somehow survived all of this, and he's back operational. He's literally heals up, gets back, gets all his shit on, and he's in Iraq. So, I mean, like at some point you just close the books.
Yeah.
Now the Navy, I hate to say this, somebody authored a book. I'm fairly significant. It was not Marcus. I'm fairly confident.
He said he didn't.
Yeah. Also somebody, wrote a script for a movie. I'm pretty certain that wasn't Marcus either. Could there have been people that were in the U.S. Navy that contributed to both of those efforts? It's likely. If I were in the Navy and I was a PR person, I wanted to, and we're trying to recruit and retain, like I would want to be engaged in that kind of thing. And I would want to promote something like that. I'll tell you a fascinating kind of a vignette here. So have you guys seen We Were Soldiers once? So Hal Moore, right, is played by Mel Gibson. I met Hal Moore and I met Randy, the guy that he wrote the story.
Right.
So Hal Moore was a regular at the squadron officer school. He used to come and brief until his passing. And I got a chance to listen to him tell his story and listen and, get his autograph. My wife and I met him. And you know how he started his speech? There was a war that happened in Vietnam. And I was there. And that is the end of the correlation between that movie and my life.
Jeez.
Okay. And so I think that there are people out there that have a perception that has been carefully crafted.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with Marcus's intent. I also think that Marcus is a team guy. He's junior enlisted at the time. I don't know if he got promoted at any point in time. And I think that after his trip to Iraq, he signaled out because he found himself in the middle of what would be normal operations and was found himself to be a detriment to the team. And I tell you what, I have felt that way at a time in my career, and that's when I stopped. And I told myself early on as a PJ when I crossed over to become an officer, if I ever felt like I would be a detriment to the mission, that's when I stop. That's the end of it. And it could be from age, it could be from injury, but it's certainly not going to be from ego.
Yeah. I think, when you start talking about, public relations or public affairs, and stuff like that, I think that is why. So I agree with you. I don't think Marcus wrote it. He said he didn't. I think it's well crafted. I think a lot of the stories are. And I believe that there's a reason for that, for retention, recruitment, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that that's why things like us, Valhalla, Nate from Valhalla, Jay Dorlius, Anti-Hero, even the Drinking Bros, right?
James Wig, Ben
Like
Pappas,
all those guys, right? Public affairs hates us.
They absolutely hate all of us.
It's because they can't control the narrative, and we will tell the truth, whether it's good or bad, you know, and we have our own opinions. Sometimes they're not polished.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a threat to the messaging. And that's, you know, from a group level that I left, that was very evident to me, just being on a one-on-one basis with whenever PAO would reach out to us and like, hey, we want to do a message, we want to do something about the weapons school or something like that. It's like, okay, you can, I'll give you access, but nothing gets published without my review and approval or the Commandant's review and approval.
Yeah.
And it's, so I don't know. That's why I'm like, man, there's no way he wrote that.
No.
Besides, he's a junior enlisted SEAL. He barely read, probably.
Yeah.
So
if
he
could
barely read.
We're going to put captains up here. Like, hey, those kids could read.
Yeah.
They'd be super upset.
And I think it's also important to bring out that from a SEER perspective, when we think about survive, evade, right? When you're on the run and one person classifies it as I'm running away, the other person is that I'm evading captivity, like capture. Evasion is a lawful order. And so when you're not doing that, you're standing your ground to fight for what? I don't know. That's not what we're taught.
Right.
It
goes against orders.
It goes against your orders to like survive.
And we always follow orders.
Right.
Bullshit.
So when you're a young guy and, you're on, things have gone south and you default to your training, it's a really awful thing to be called a coward after the fact when you're not on that op. And maybe I'm hearing that somebody has ISR footage, but I can tell you from my perspective, and I'm the one that, the Air Operations Center, so we know where the orbits are. At that time, there was no ISR coverage that I am aware of. And I'm fairly certain that we know where all orbits are, because even if you're another governmental agency, you still fall on the ATO, right? The Air Tasking Order. So unless there is something that was hand launched at the time that this incident happened, which I don't think this is the case because nobody planned this to occur.
Right.
So why would you have that over the top of something that wasn't supposed to be?
Was there ISR over Turbine?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was well after the fact.
Okay.
And
but that was a known operation going in there.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, they would have put eyes on well after the event. So we could have people that are reporting, hey, I saw this with my own eyes, but not realizing, putting the timeline together, it was out of sync with the actual event. Now, I can't speak to anything that was maybe captured by the enemy. That's a piece I just don't know. And maybe they have their own video stuff, but I would consider that to be rather dubious because
unlikely, just in the way that
I've seen some
quadcopters weren't existing back then. And
well, I mean, let's say for example, you're a bad guy, you're a Taliban guy, and you have GoPro.
I knew it.
And I'm gonna be, I'm gonna carry my GoPro in there, and I'm gonna whip ass on these U.S. military guys. They wouldn't know that they were SEALs likely. And so, and how often do we see that? I don't remember seeing a lot of that, especially early in the war.
Yeah.
Those guys weren't sophisticated like to that degree. So could it have been after the fact that they brought a GoPro in and that's what we're looking at is like, hey, we were here. I can tell you that from multiple instances leading up to that event, so let's say we go in 01 and we're there 02, 03, 04, 05. We knew that they were picking up their bodies. They were picking up their cartridge case. They were sanitizing the battlefield to keep us from being able to kind of like articulate victory with any meaningful metric. None of us really expected that early on. And so when we were encountering this, we're like, hey man, it doesn't matter. It's the Rangers, SF, SEAL guys, like, we killed 1,000 guys. They're like, show me the bodies. There's none there. So you guys are liars. Well, not really. I mean, guys are coming on with bullet holes in them. Like, what'd you guys do? Get out there and, shoot each other?
Where was your last death?
Yeah. So there's a lot
That's
of
like the fifth pop culture reference in this one. This has been fantastic. We're just going to keep it going. Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, guys, a firefight ensued. I'm relatively sure of it. But we saw this on, Talker Gar 2002,
Yes.
same exact thing. Like
Yeah.
the force that kept those men down in Hell's Halfpipe and the rest of the, the Fish Hook and all these other locations in Tacker Gar.
Yes.
Like, it was rumored to be way more. Like, and that's a whole other thing about how many they estimated, how many there were. But, from every report on the ground, they're like, dude, there's so many of them. But they had this tactic that we just weren't aware of yet. We're like, holy crap.
So, and I think, let's go back to the source of what the story would be, right? So there's Marcus's version of the story. And his version of the story, I think, would be the closest to the truth, right? He's first person. He was there. None of the men that are deceased have a story to tell. So he's telling their story from his perspective. We have other data that suggests that other people had a role in that. It could be very well by the evidence. We see how their body is laid, the mortal wounds that they sustained, the communication equipment that they had on, and so forth, right? So you asked me early on, are there deviations? Yeah, the way the story is written and the way that the battlefield looked, there clearly are some. Is it worth, pulling the whole thing apart again to examine? I'm not so certain. Is there, is it going to change the disposition favorably for anyone? The only concern that I would say that I have is let's say, for example, that your husband was killed, and then you have someone else's husband who was killed, and one man gets the credit for another man's actions. In the end of the day, does it move the needle which family gets the credit for what? Perhaps. Is that something that needs to be marched out into the public domain and then one man discredited while the other man credited? What is it going to do? It's destructive at that point. And that's something that I wrestle with because, on top of that, you have, which is a well-known phenomenon, where the more times you tell a story, the more the story drifts. And that's Marcus's issue. So when like any of us have endured some kind of a traumatic event, and you tell the story the first time, it's literally the closest to the truth. The second time you tell that story, it's going to be off, 5, 10 degrees. And then next thing you know, it's way off.
Yeah.
And 20 years later, as he's recalling it, his mind has, and this is not just Marcus, this is all of us. There was I think is a CBS or NBC reporter that got a whole bunch of bad press.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That said that he was someplace where he wasn't.
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper. Yeah.
Well, no, it was
I think it was Peter Jennings.
Yeah, Peter Jennings.
Was it?
Oh yeah, he came up with all kinds of fabrications, I'll say.
Really?
It's like
I remember that. I don't know why I have out. Oh, okay.
He was
you had to. I mean, it's like going from I carry 2 grenades to 50 grenades.
Yeah,
man. I mean, 50 grenades is the absolute minimum.
Yeah,
you have to carry. Like, what are we even talking about here? Like, I am carrying 50 grenades. Like, that's at least. Come on, I'm not.
It's like this. How many times in a team room have you said like, I took fire, and the next thing you know, it's like it was rockets and grenades, and I took out my K-bar and stabbed a guy in the throat, and it was I killed another man with my helmet, and so like
helmet kill.
Yeah,
don't see those often.
No,
that's because you.
You don't have one of those.
No, absolutely not. No.
Yeah, the hatchet one or the machete or whatever, and so these things grow legs.
Yeah,
and especially if you've endured something like that. People suggest that they may have heard another story. They suggest it, and that suggestion that comes into the conversation resets the bar for the person telling, and so that story drifts naturally. And so that's one of the things that I want to caution people about when they judge. They take out like a audio excerpt out of an interview, and they go, "This is incriminating evidence." Well, it may not be true, what they're saying, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's incriminating. It means they're human. And we might need to think about, put our caps on a little bit and go with humility, you know what? I wasn't that guy, thank God. And I'm not the lone survivor, and I have to deal with that every day I wake up. And every day I go to sleep, I think about them. And, I don't have to live that life. I have the luxury quarterbacking this thing from, with the 2,000-mile screwdriver, adjusting throttle here. It's like it's an awful thing that I think some men can slip into. And so we're here in the team room talking about how we respect one another. Are there things that likely, for example, I would say that one of the biggest pieces that is somewhat inflated is the extent of injuries. And some people, Marcus has mentioned a great deal of things, and it's a very good way to kind of characterize this. We're all retired now. We've all gone through our VA stuff. And, every one of us that have gone through the service have made claims, and we experience things. We've been hurt. And, I feel like sometimes, if I say, I've had like, I don't know, 6 surgeries, put me back together. I've been through Andrews Institute down at API, and you guys probably have as well.
Not cool enough. Don't rate.
Oh, so
I blame my officer at the 58th.
As you should.
I took your spot, bro.
He just couldn't, exactly. He just couldn't get there. He called me on the way. It was really unprofessional. Oh, this place is beautiful, Aaron. You should see it. It was before video chat. But, oh my goodness! Every day we're playing tennis by 4. I'm here with a football player. One of my boys texted. Can I say this name on there? So I won't say who I got it from, but he was there with Odell Beckham.
There's all these things, guys. I was there with Robert Griffin III.
Oh, shout out.
It was awful.
Washington guy.
Yeah. So anyways, my point is that some of the things, the medical piece, right? There's a HIPAA piece, right? So I'll never discuss it. I'll never discuss what I know and don't know. But I know that he was injured and he was extremely sick when we picked him up. Was he shot? Yes, he was. And there's some of the things that he claims, may have been discovered later. We may just not have, because, it's a field trauma situation. You get them back to bright lights and cold steel and they're running a full spectrum analysis on him. And you know what? You're trying to keep him alive because he's, poisoned essentially. And then so the broad spectrum antibiotics and all that stuff. And you're kind of, but then how was he able to get in a car and go to visit SEAL Team 6, at Stuttgart when we were at Launch Duel? Well, it's because he's at that point, that's the drive he had. That's the adrenaline load and everything else. And I mean, even though it's days later, he's still, I'll give you an example. He would not let us take him out of Afghanistan until we had the ramp ceremony for all the deceased. He stood there in line with the rest of his team that survived and us Air Force guys and with our berets on and the SF guys for that ramp ceremony. That says a lot. I'm going to say something that is likely to shock the both of you. So I've heard some people discuss about, the financial remuneration for the book and everything. Do you happen to know anything about the Eagle Fund?
I recognize the name.
Yeah, just the name.
They're the ones that fund API, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
You know who the benefactor is for that?